Hi, my name is Ian Walls. I'm with ByWater Solutions. We are an open source library support company. We do Folio, we do other stuff. We don't do LDP. So I'm going to talk about how we support our libraries doing their reporting needs without LDP. So yeah, a little bit about us. So ByWater Solutions was founded in 2009. I was there in 2010 until about 12, working on Koha, which was our primary software at that time. I then took a brief stint into academic libraries and came back with the promise of working on Folio. By that time, we'd also expanded into several other open source products. We're currently offering 6 or 7, depending on how you count it, different open source solutions. But it's very important for us to state that we are not a technology company, we're a support company. Our job is to take care of libraries and help them meet their needs using open source, because we're fanatical about it, or at least I am. I actually think everybody else at the company is too, but maybe me a bit to a fault. In the time since I left and when came back, the company has grown immensely. We support literally thousands of libraries, and we finally crossed the all 50 states list. I think was it Tennessee? No, it was West Virginia, Kentucky. Somewhere in that area was the last state. We also have several international partners as well, so it's not just a US venture. We've been doing Folio since about 2019. I was brought back on to do that. Previously with the 5 colleges, which I guess is also involved in Folio. Pretty cool. I was looking at the project at the time and being like, hey, I should get involved in this. I have open source ILS experience. And then things sort of moved on without me. So that's a little bit about us. Why aren't we using LDP? I mean, there's been so much community effort put into making this solution, and am I just being contrary? Possibly to a degree, but also there were some technical considerations that we wanted to factor in. So one of the considerations, LDP has more moving parts. There's more to it. You have a separate database that you need to maintain. You need to get data into there. So you have to have the mechanisms to be able to send the data back and forth. You have to keep that data secure. You have to be able to manage access to it. You have to be able to respect privacy. There's just more of a layer to it. And most of the Folio partners that ByWater works with, partner is how we say customer in ByWater Ease. So the 5 libraries that I'm supporting on Folio are smaller. We're not operating at Library of Congress scales here. These are 100,000, 200,000 biblios. We're not gigantic. So having these extra pieces didn't really make a ton of sense logistically for us. There's also that data synchronization layer, right, where you're having the data coming from Folio into LDP, and that has to be maintained and synchronized and gets a little bit out of date. In a lot of applications, that's fine. There's plenty of conditions where, a day stale is fine. But having come from the Koha sphere, where arbitrary reports can be run on your data at any time that you want to run them, having real-time data access was just sort of the expectation that I was coming in with anyway. So I take that as an advantage to the approach of how we're doing it. We also wanted to be sure that we were presenting our partner libraries with unmediated but supported access to their data. So that's their data. Everything that's in that system belongs to those libraries, and they should be able to get at every single thing that's in there. And we will help do that. We will make sure that they have the power to get to what they need, but we don't want to be the roadblock. We don't want to be the bottleneck to being able to get to that information. So we wanted to have something that was directly partner facing, where they could run ad hoc queries as needed to get the information that they want, and also have that support layer where we can say, yeah, put in a ticket, we'll make the report for you, show you how to use it, and what level are you interested in engaging? All right, so the basic approach. This is nothing terribly radical. If you've been to any other of the reporting kind of sessions, this is not, I'm not breaking new ground here. But the FOLIO database, which is highlighted in orange, if you can perceive the color orange on this slide, Postgres database. Postgres has many schema, which is just a technical term for sort of a clustering of tables. And each app has its own data in a separate schema. That's that whole microservices architecture. Things are broken apart that way. But at least how I've seen it done, it all lives on one database. So we can apply a single relationalized schema using Postgres views to view that data. Not only does it condense it from multiple schema into one, it also relationalizes a lot of the JSON data, flattens it out. And I am so thankful that I didn't have to do the bulk of the work for mapping all that. John Miller from UChicago, thank you for getting all that started. You moved many mountains that allowed this to be a possibility. So once we have this single relationalized schema, we then have access to it through a defined role, saying, yes, you can access this under these conditions. And I'm not going to go into the details of exactly how we secure all that, because that's not what you do when you talk about security stuff. But just so you know, you access it safely. And what we do to access the front end is provide a service called Metabase. This is an open source business analytics interface that we shopped around for. We found it. We love it. We actually started it, offering it as the FOLIO reporting interface for our FOLIO partners, but we've since extended that as an offering to any library that would like to have Metabase support with whatever backend systems. Right now, it's all of the other ByWater supported products are by default, but if there's a driver for what you want to connect to, we can connect to it. So, sort of a two-step process and how this is working. First is the relationalizing data. Yes, that is a word. I don't care if the little thing's underlined. No, it's really a word. So yes, those original mappings, John Miller provided those, and for the most part, they're pretty solid. They haven't needed to change a bunch. There have been updates since this came out in Juniper. Yeah, long about's Juniper. So yeah, there have been data structure changes to Folio, whether you believe, right? So being able to factor those in, some of the big ones, there are some changes around tags. There's also some changes around how data import structures things that had to be reflected. So went and made those updates. As you can see at the bottom, there is a link. This is all up on GitHub. So feel free to go poke around for it. What this repository does, it's fairly small. All things said, it creates an SQL file that basically says, hey, we're going to define a new Postgres schema. We're going to use views. We're going to map them out these ways. We're going to call them this. For those more complex JSON objects like alternate titles or other things that are in the instance record, those get flattened into sort of separate views, basically like joined tables. It's normalized to a degree. And if y'all were at the technical roadmap meeting just before lunch, there was some discussion of maybe actually making some of those relationalized changes directly to Folio in the future, if that can give us some performance improvements. So this would adapt to that. Optionally, the install script will set up a read-only view to this new schema that's created. If you've already defined it once, like you've already installed this and you're doing an upgrade, you don't necessarily have to change your role. You can just use the username and password you've configured, and then you take that SQL file and apply it to your database, like a database admin would. Hopefully someone with sufficient privileges and experience has done that for you. And there you go. You now have a view of your data. But how are you going to view it? That's step two. So step two, the actual querying of the data. Like I said, we use Metabase as our front end, connecting securely through a whole bunch of fun security mechanisms. Metabase is real cool. I like it a lot. One of the things that it does is it does have its own database, not to copy your data. It's not caching things. It's not a data lake itself. but it analyzes the schema of the various data sources that it's connected to, and it builds some very nice sort of helper components. Like, it helps you to understand what is the data schema that I'm looking at here. It helps you build a data dictionary of what the structure of the data is and how it might connect. Listing out enumerations that are in enumerated fields. It has some nice ergonomic affordances there. So we get Metabase spun up, wired up to Folio for our Folio partners, and then we train our partner libraries on how to use Metabase, and also in the whole process remind them that, yes, this is complicated. You probably have lots of other things you need to be doing with your time, so you can always come to us and say, hey, Ian, write this report for me, please. And that's part of the service. So, like I said, Metabase is super cool. Why? Why is Metabase so cool? It's cool because... Sorry, sometimes I hear myself talk and I realize it's a whole thing. So reports can be organized however you want. So there's Metabase has a concept of collections. So basically folders. It's, not a tagged approach, but a folder approach where you can group reports into different batches. You can then apply permissions to those. So you can say, okay, this user group can only see reports here, or they can only see these as read-only, and these are, read-write if they have the permissions for it. So there's a whole permission set up for all of that. You can wire it up to existing things like an LDAP directory, or if you have other automations and connections, there are other authentication mechanisms possible. You also have a personal space for every user account, so you can have your reports for things that just you need to work on and see. Again, depending on what groups you're in and what access levels you have to the data. It's super easy to take an existing report and just riff on it without changing that saved report there. You basically start with it, start making edits, and if you like what you did, you can replace the report, or you can create an entirely new one, put that, say, in your personal space, or say if you're just changing some of the filters, you could put it in whatever collection you and your library have agreed to organize. There is a concept of data models, which was it was introduced after we initially went live. So I'm still exploring some of it, but it lets you abstract some of the raw data a little bit further. So for example, usually if you're looking something up in the items table and you're creating a report on that, I have found 9 times out of 10, you want the title in that list, and that's not there. So you could create a data model that would automatically add everything relevant from the item and the holding and the instance. And let's bring in the real name of the location. Let's bring in the name of the material type. Flatten all that into the data model so you have a much more sort of human viewable set of elements without having to do all those joins in the system. Metabase is built for visualization. It's built for dashboarding. So you can not only have lists of things, but you can summarize and aggregate and turn that into all kinds of different charts and graphs. You can co-visualize things. So it's possible if you have the same structure. So for example, you could take your circulation by date and co-graph that with your gate counts, if you had that as a data source. You cannot, because it's not a data lake, you can't do joins across different data sources. So I couldn't, say, take Folio data and cross-reference it with some patron data store somewhere, unless you remix that yourself. But you can co-visualize within the same dashboard or even on top of the same report. So pretty cool. Runtime parameters are supported. So you can make a baseline report and then be able to query it like, I want for these particular dates or for this particular call number range. It's got built-in email delivery, so you can schedule, reports being sent to you. So you don't have to go and log in, remember your login and fetch the thing. You can say, all right, every Monday, I want to see the lost items report. And that will land in your email. Or if there's nothing there, you can skip it. Or you could have it arrive and say, there's nothing there. It really depends on what you want. And I think my personal favorite, because I don't know if you figured this out, I'm kind of geeky. I really, really like the full RESTful API that it has, because you can have your partner I can have my partner libraries define a list of records that need actions done on them. They can define that in Metabase, come up with a query that says, yep, these are the things I need you to change. Tell me what that change is. And I can then have my workflow engine fetch all of that, process, and provide the updates. And again, because it's in real time, we can do it in batches. So if you have a particularly large set of changes that need to be made, you can do them 1,000 records at a time. And it will just each run through the workflow. We'll fetch a few more records and off you go. So that's why I think Metabase is cool. Perhaps you'd like to actually see it. Is anybody interested in actually seeing what Metabase looks like? Cool, I kind of anticipated that. So hopefully that's the case here. And I'm probably blocking way too much with this. Okay, that actually worked. Come on. Fine. All right. So this is a circulation dashboard that one of our partner libraries has put together. Each one of these little components here is a separate report. We have a unified filter that goes across the entire system. So if we wanted to say change the dates here to be more of a fiscal year kind of thing, and you could select this in the interface if you wanted to, but we'll update that filter manually. Each one of these grinds through, spits out, and you can see your updated dashboards. If I want to subscribe to that, that would be here, subscriptions. Oh, I'm already. Looks like Bridget's already subscribed to that to get it within the first Monday at 8 a.m. So good job, Bridget. Another dashboard that may or may not be interesting. This one was a ticket that our partner library put in. They really needed stats in a very specific way. So this is what we calculated out. They do a lot of materials circulation, so they really want to know about, how those laptops are behaving, what's going on with projectors and chargers and headphones. So we were able to pull this together in a way that hopefully will continue to serve them into the future. This library is in the process of hiring lots of new folks, so I look forward to seeing what they come up with. So we've got dashboards. Of course, you can also just get your lists of things. So this particular one is written in SQL with Metabase. You can do both direct SQL queries, again, if you have permissions, or you can use the questions interface to visually build your query. So in this case, this one's taken a little bit of time because it's kind of a complex report. So this is a weeding report that was put together. I believe the question was, we want materials in the stacks starting with P is their call number that have had 5 or fewer loans and whose copyright is between these certain dates. And so here they are. We also even brought in, one of the mappings that we added later was being able to parse some of the mark tags so that we can say, okay, look up and give me whatever value there is in the 946, if there is one, and dump that into the space. It gets a little more complicated because it's mark, but it actually works pretty well. Here's another one that we have. So this is instances in the thesis collection that have a 092. We're doing so, again, I've used this a lot for data cleanup. So there have been cases where we've had items whose call number didn't match their holding call number, and we wanted to track that. Or there have been cases where, we use it for record deletions a lot. Get rid of these instances, because we all know how easy it is to do that. Can sort of put that through a workflow process. One of our libraries uses this as the basis for end of semester notices. So they'll define a list of, okay, these are all the checkouts for this patron group. and we want to notify them on this date that they're getting this. So they define a template in notices area, say this is the list of people who should get that, when it should happen, and we run again workflow engine outside the scope of this talk, but it does fit very nicely hand in glove with Metabase and the API. So let's try a live demo. Let's actually try to do a question. Who wants to say something? All right, so we're going to start with a question. We'll pick our FOLIO reporting database. Does anybody want to throw out an idea for what they'd like to see? Let's keep it relatively simple. Let's start with something in inventory. So we'll filter out to instances, and let's go all the way to the item level. So we'll connect through to holdings, where the instance ID equals holding ID. Wish that this thing would move, but I think I'm just making it worse. And we'll connect it again to items. In this case, where the holdings ID there. All right. And let's say we want to do a filter by locations. So location, we're going to do item effective location ID is item ID. And then we can throw a filter in here where we say, all right, location is filter the name. Let's see what's in cassettes and CDs. Add filter there. And we can start with that. And boom, here's your list of item level records, but with title, with instance and holding information. I'm actually really curious how many this is going to return. It limits at 2,000 rows through the interface, just so that you don't crash the system while you're doing a live demo at WOLFcon. If you actually were to download, that's the next little button right here, you can download that as Excel or as CSV. That will have the complete results list for you. Similarly, if you queried it through the JSON API, you get the full list. Gosh, that's a lot of columns. Let's do something about that. So from instances, now we'll take the instance ID and the title and the author and the publication year, but I'm going to pass on the rest of it. I don't feel like I need the rest of those. From the holdings, I would like the call number. That sounds pretty cool. And let's do copy number if there's one there. Items. Again, I can clear out a lot of that. We want to see the barcode. And let's say the status. And then locations, we don't need any of those except for the location name. Let's add the code too, why not? So that should give us a lot fewer columns for what we're seeing and make it load that much faster. If we wanted to get more of a report, we can summarize. Let's summarize by, we filtered by location. So let's summarize by, I didn't join it. I want to do a good join. I want to filter by material type. So I should probably join by material type. Okay, we don't need any of that. None. Just have the name there, filter, material types. We don't want to filter then, we want to summarize. That's right. Count of rows by material type, name, boom, boom. And it automatically tries to create a chart with this. That's not the way I would display it. So if I want to change my visualization settings, I love pie. And pie charts are good too. So there we are. You can modify your options. Yes, material type, display name. So it looks like it is mostly audio cassettes and compact discs in these compact disc and audio cassette locations. We do have some print books, print and audio books. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And then other. Oh, that's always fun. Let's take a look at other. Oh, only one. That's not too bad. Computer, compact discs, and videos. So two. Okay. So there you go. If I really like this, I could hit save and save it into the collections wherever I want to save it. I don't really like it. I don't think my partner libraries would really like it either. So we'll just let that one pass. But there, now we could also go so far as to spin up a new SQL query. Would anyone like to come up and write SQL to search the, no, good, don't. It's complicated. It's not the most fun thing in the world, but you have the power, basically everything that is mapped, which is the goal is to be everything, you should be able to get to it. If you'd like some help with that, here, let's go back. Let's crack open this data dictionary portion here. So if you're curious about what's in any given space, so let's take a look at alternative titles. We have ID, instance ID, type ID, and title. We want to go to something that's a little bit more robust. We'll take a look at instances. So you can see these are the various fields that are pulled out of the JSON that are mapped and are, relatively straightforward. In this case, previously held, there are 3 distinct values. It's a category type. If you want to see a different view of that that's a little richer, we can go here to browse data and take a look at, let's switch out to items. Okay, sorry, this is going to list all the items. I'm going to go back. And we want to hit this little book. So details, you can make annotations about these tables. You can say why this is interesting, what you need to care about. You can define the fields in the tables, and sort of there's both their database types. In this case, yes, this is a UUID, but how do we want to represent that in Metabase? There's some adjustments that can be made there. It's also possible with keys back and forth that you can create the links. So you notice that I had to do those joins between instances and holdings and items. You can train Metabase to know that those joins are supposed to be there, and it'll just do them for you as soon as you say, yep, I want this information too. All the questions that are currently wired up to the table. And there's this component called X-ray, which is kind of useful. It's basically an auto-generated dashboard by looking at the data, and it tries to tell you something useful, and it's very hit or miss. I have not found it to be like, oh, this is the best place. I want to save this. I've never clicked this button. But that's how we do non-LDP reporting for ByWater partners. I'm half an hour in. Was I allotted? How much time was I given? Was I given an hour and a half? I'm like, I don't have an hour and a half worth of content for y'all. So if anybody would like to ask questions, now would be a great time to do that.
Joseph Malloy with the Spokane Public Library. On some of those reports that you were generating, how is the printing option available for all the old school staff who want a printed list for collecting weeding reports of items? Without a CSV download and manipulation.
There isn't a PDF export option, which I would love, especially with some of the visualizations that are in place, nor is there an SVG. It really is, if you want to have this physically on your person, you would either need to print from browser, which for those longer lists is going to cap at 2,000, or you would need to download as CSV or Excel and then manipulate from there. Yes. My own mic runner.
Sorry, David Larson, University of Chicago. You said many of your partners aren't especially large. Are there practical limits to the size of a library for which this would be a recommended solution?
Yes, but I don't have the numbers. So if you are operating at a particularly fast scale, doing queries across summarizations across all of your instances or all of your users or all of your items is going to get computationally expensive, and you're putting that load directly on the Folio database with this solution. That said, there's nothing stopping you from pointing Metabase at LDP. So if you're operating at a much higher scale and you need to have that data warehouse, that data lake separate from your production system, you could use this as a front end for that. But I would be concerned about the load that could be placed on asking frequent questions of a high volume production system. So that is one of the considerations as to whether this approach, usually the step one portion of this approach, is appropriate for your particular context. I'm sorry, I realize I have not looked at the chat. All right, I'm gonna jump into the chat. So we have a question: are you planning to create a Folio app for Metabase so that users can create reports within the Folio UI? I am not. I know. This is mostly just for sheer technical limitation on my part. I would love to get into developing Folio more, and I was actually thinking that it would be an easier first step to modify to add a widget in the dashboards app that allows you to reference a report in Metabase. I suppose the one workaround could just be an iframe. Yeah, I know. Not my favorite approach. I suppose it's possible it could be worked out, but that's not something that I'm going to do. How would you do a counts report using this? Counts, a count of what? So you can do summarizations where you count rows. You could also do summation. Here, let me bring that back.
I think you kind of already answered me. I think I just wanted to see when you were doing the questions, what it looked like from the start to create a report where you're doing a count rather than, having all the information in all the rows. Just like a simple count of something.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, if we were literally just doing items and we're going to filter on status name, checked out, summarize, count. A lot of things checked out. Did I do that right? No, I didn't. And there are a couple different ways of getting at these filters after you've asked a question. So if this looks like a slightly different interface than what I just showed, that's why. That's more accurate. Okay. So like I said, these are smaller libraries. We have, less active cert going on at a go. What type of SQL does Metabase use? Metabase has built-in drivers for Postgres, obviously, MySQL, MS SQL, most H2 it uses for its sample database. It also has drivers for other data sources like Druid or BigQuery, or did I get the one that Amazon offers? Redshift, is that it? Yeah. There's several major, other sort of setups. One thing that it does not have, and it makes me cry, is a generic RESTful API driver. It'd be real cool if we could take out that step one portion and be able to query follow through the APIs, because I know that's how we're supposed to do it. That would require writing a driver in Java, which at this point in my life is a little beyond me. Anyone who wants to volunteer to do that for me, I'll thank you with many cookies. So we have that. One solution that I have been seeing is that by going through BigQuery and some of the other integrations that you can use, you can essentially say upload a spreadsheet to Google and have it turn into data in Metabase. It's pretty neat if you don't mind having your data go through Google. Any more of your data go through Google. What formats can reports be emailed in? They will come through as HTML in the email, and then the results can be attached as CSV, Excel, or JSON. There is no PDF at this time. It's in the community roadmap. I'm just not sure where it is in that roadmap. Can a query be done through a database replication to take the load off the system, sure. If you've got another database, DBA kind of setup where you can point at a read-only replica and you connect to that instead of to your read-write database, go for it. It is very much assuming you have access to a database and all of the historical knowledge and sort of things that go with being able to set that up. So I'm sure that there are ways that it could be done to optimize for larger systems. Again, it could also be pointed at something like LDP, so you can have a data lake concept and work from there. All right, that's the chat. Any other questions in the physical room?
Yeah, I'm wondering about the possibility of this pulling data from multiple sources, multiple data sources into a single dashboard, and how you would manage that.
Yes, it can pull in from as many configured data sources as you want to do. So I don't have an example of that for our FOLIO partners, because our FOLIO partners are really only using the FOLIO system. But for other ByWater partners who have multiple of our products, say we have it connected to their Koha system and to their Aspen system, and if they have Coral, we can wire it up there as well. Each one of those data sources is doing separate queries. So you can't make a single report that touches two data sources, but you can make a single dashboard that touches as many different data sources as you want. So you can co-visualize and put those onto a dashboard together, but you couldn't join across the different data sources. Because again, it's doing a real-time query against those particular things, and it just technically can't split that way. But you can mix them together into a dashboard that would have, say, here's my, electronic information from this data source and my physical from this and my crazy locally developed gate count system that I keep making up. I should probably just write it. I'm running the mic.
Dal from Michigan State. I have a question about access to the SQL Postgres schema. My understanding is that some hosted service does not allow library to be exposed to the access point to those Postgres schema. It's like, how is that true, or is there anything that you can suggest that we should do?
Yes, some, depending on who is hosting your system, there may or may not be rules in place for what is allowed. In our particular context, we are able to do this, and it works out really well for us. In your context, it may be different, and you may need to have a discussion with your host or a negotiation, or this may not be the appropriate solution. That could also just be how it falls. But this does sort of depend on, yes, you have to be able to access the database through some sort of mechanism. Again, I'm not going to go into all the different security layers that we have in place, but I'm confident as to the security of it all.
Björn from University of Leipzig. Metabase has different pricing options. So would you say for on-premises that the open source license or free open source license would be sufficient, or are there any limitations? Or what do you recommend for a pricing option?
What we use we use the open source license at ByWater, and that's met our needs. If you need some of the more advanced features, like I think they've got SAML integration for authentication as an enterprise option, that may be a case where you want to purchase support from metabase.com and get access to some of their cool stuff. You could do it on-prem with them, I suppose. One downside I've seen to the licensed version is it does limit by the seats. So you can only have a certain number of users at different access levels. And with the open source version, that's just not the case. And that seems kind of horrible to me, to limit how many of your staff can use the data, because it's your data. You should be able to access it. Oh, one feature I totally skipped is it is also possible to publish dashboards publicly. So you can build a dashboard in Metabase and say this one specifically goes out onto webs, and we're gonna have our board take a look at this, or maybe the trustees need to look at it. I've got to go and present to the provost. You can have that information sort of up there live without having to copy, paste, download, again, because it doesn't have that good PDF or SVG export yet. So this is great. I'm getting so many questions.
Do you guys offer a solution for on-premise data sources to be connected, such as like Azure Data Gateway uses for Power BI?
So at ByWater, what we offer is initially all of our hosted cloud solution products are wired up as part of the service, and anything else that you would want to connect, we would have a negotiation about what that's going to entail, because you need to get through the security and privacy concerns, make sure that everyone's comfortable with being able to access that, because we would really prefer to host Metabase in our infrastructure rather than supporting a locally hosted one. We'll do it if that's what's necessary, but it increases the complexity of the support, which again, we're a support company, so that's our pricing model around that. So if you're doing something that requires a lot more complexity for us to be able to maintain, we would need to have a talk about the money of that whole thing, which thankfully I don't have to do. I don't have to work with the sales at all. I just get to come up here and talk about fun technologies, and I'll let the more business inclined people talk about numbers that way.
I had two, maybe. One is, would you upload your slides? That was one thing I was going to ask, so that we can get those from this guide. Yes. Okay, thank you. And then the second one was about, I guess your opinion. I guess if you're in a group setting, like a consortium, like, would you be able to set this up where, would you set it up in such a way that each, you're using different connections for each individual library, or would you do something more, which you were, I think, alluding to, like creating a data lake, was, consolidating all the data first and then connecting this to that? Because really, we kind of have a need to report across individual institutions, as well as say, well, this is, we could also say this is the whole, and we want to report against that just as an aggregate.
It does. All right. So we have had the case, at least in Folio, where we've had to break down that kind of situation, because we're hosting smaller libraries. For some of our other Metabase partners that are non-Folio, we have consortial sort of arrangements, and they are in a situation where the data is hosted in one system, and we need to be able to break it down and then provide access that's appropriate. So, tiny public library X can see their information and not necessarily the information for the entire system, but we also need to have folks at the administrative layer see everything. And so that can be done through permissions setup. Permissions are table level, not row level, which I think actually might be a feature in the enterprise edition, if that's something that's a concern. So the approach for that is, in those cases, we would set up read-only reports, where you basically predefine the report and put any runtime parameters on it that would be necessary, and say, here you go, public library X. This will show you what you need to see, and you can't modify the query and you can't ask other questions yourself, but this will give you the data that you need. So it becomes a sort of mediated access approach. That starts getting into, trust levels and training, making sure that, folks that are at sort of the distributed libraries have the information they need, and that they're trained up to be able to access what level they're given. If you were, say, in a situation with multiple Folio tenants, each one of those would be no, actually. Going back to step one, the Folio reporting approach, you could define views. So we could do it individually for each tenant. And then I'm pretty sure there'd be a way to aggregate, assuming that they're hosted in the same database, those tenants, be able to aggregate those into a common view. And so there'd be N+1 different consolidated schema. Haven't done it yet. I'm sure there are pitfalls.
In that situation, what if they're not hosted in the same database? Would you be able to have some other system that would pull them into a data pool that then this thing could query?
So if there are multiple tenants split across multiple clusters, so database here, database there, and you wanted to create a single summarized view across all of those, you would need to pull them into some sort of lake. There'd have to be some sort of separate thing that would pull in that information. Again, because you can't query across multiple data sources simultaneously. You could co-visualize, and it may be possible in certain applications to get the information that you want onto the same screen across those different sources. But I think that once you are at that kind of level, having some sort of, union data set would be an appropriate thing to do. Again, I'm operating at a much smaller scale than some of the things we've talked about at WOLFcon this year. So, yeah. How do I still have 40 minutes? Should I do stand up? What are there more questions from anyone in the ether or in the physical room? Would folks like to adjourn early? How should we handle this? Question is, can I show what sharing a public dashboard would look like? I don't have one of those configured with Folio data, but one of our Koha partners has it set up on their site. If you don't mind me pulling up a completely unrelated set of data. One moment, please. I need to put the mic down. Not drop it. There, I can dig through it here. Hello. All right. And then folks in Zoom land may want to see that. All right. This is McKinney Public Library's Public Statistics Dashboard. It is powered off of Metabase. It's taking its dear sweet time loading because it knows that I'm doing a live demonstration. I'll have to talk to our systems engineer about that. Oh, wait. So yeah, you can see each one of these components is separately loading. So if they take a little bit longer than average, you at least get something. So we can see our month circulation by collection type pretty straight away. I'm also not sure how many other folks are accessing this at this time. It may be that McKinney has disseminated this reporting quite widely. Oh, there we go. There's some numbers. So they built this dashboard and they've put it up there, and they use it for being able to live report where they are for these certain metrics that they've put in place. This area is also linking out to other dashboards. So you do have the option for these sort of widgets on the dashboard. Some of them can be as simple as like, here's a list of links. So it's not always a specific chart or data list. It can actually have some, do folks remember the portal wars from like 20 years ago when we were all making like web portals, customized dashboard widgets? There's a Google product to that effect. It seemed like a cool thing at the time. Yes. Steps in.
After you've created a report or a dashboard through the UI editor or query creator, can that be exported and shared with other users outside your organization for them to reuse and recycle?
So the question's about being able to reuse reports and dashboards that are created. Yes and no. So if you build things through questions, or in the case of dashboards, a lot of the internal names and links are very specific to this Metabase install. And so taking that data out and putting it into another Metabase, basically the IDs wouldn't line up and things would be unexpected. There may be ways to mitigate that, and I'm actively looking at how to do that because I want to have a reports library where you can say, all right, we're firing up a new Folio install and they are a academic theological library. So we are going to preload their system with these reports because we know they need this kind of accreditation to come up and basically save us from having to do all this manually. So I'm positive there's a way to do it, but I haven't done it yet. What I do know that we can do is with SQL-based reports, those can be shared back and forth very easily. So having an SQL-based report library would very easily allow for application for any case where the underlying SQL structure is the same. So in the case of, yes, a Folio report at this version of Folio, so an ORCID report could be applied across multiple ORCID systems. You'd need an external process to push and pull that data around, be that your fingers or some sort of workflow engine, which is always where I'm leaning and keep bringing up, even though that's not the topic of this this meeting. Workflows are important. Come to the session tomorrow. I'm just going to go from session to session, promoting one after the other. I'm not sure how many of you are here from me having said, come today, well, yesterday. Yeah, so we're still working on getting that process in place. I know there's ways to do it. Not seeing anything else in chat. I think we're reaching crickets. So if that's everything, I don't have any further slides to go, hey, look, there's slides that I showed after this demo. So thank you, everyone. This has been really awesome and very, very engaging. If you have any questions that you want to ask me privately, I'm around. If you want to flame me, you can do that later too. I realize this is, this is one particular approach that may or may not be useful for folks, but that's what we got. So thank you very much.